Okay, so think about this for a second.
Okay.
Two of the biggest health problems in the world, right?
Yeah.
Malaria, like hundreds of millions of people every year getting infected with malaria.
Right.
And then cancer, sadly, millions dying every year.
Huge problem.
Massive problem.
Yeah.
Seem like totally separate things, though, right?
Yeah, they do.
Like one's a parasite and the other's your own cells gone wrong.
Right.
But what if there was a connection?
Mm.
Could getting malaria actually change your chances of getting cancer later?
That is the question that's kind of driving this whole deep dive we're going to do today.
Okay.
So we've been, looking at some research, exploring this potential link between these two diseases, specifically in South America,
Okay.
spanning like 30 years,
Wow.
from 1990 to 2019.
Okay. A good chunk of time.
Yeah, so we're drawing from like studies by the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation,
Okay.
among others,
Right.
just to see like, are there any patterns between malaria rates and cancer rates in that part of the world?
So for a listener who's, maybe not super deep in the weeds of all this data,
Right.
I mean, I know for me, just looking at like big data sets like that,
It can be overwhelming.
yeah, it's like, where do I even start?
Exactly. Yeah.
So we're not going to drown you in numbers here. What we're looking for are like the interesting points.
The insights.
It's like, what's the story that this data is telling us?
Yeah, exactly. And, maybe some surprising things.
Right.
Like, could something as bad as malaria actually be protective in some ways?
Yeah, against something like cancer.
Against cancer, that's the big question.
So why South America specifically?
So South America is interesting because you have this mix of countries
Yeah.
where malaria has been a problem for a long time, like a really long time. We call that endemic.
Okay.
And then you have countries where it's been rare or like totally absent for decades.
Okay.
So the study focused on 7 countries where malaria was really common, like during the whole study period.
Okay.
So we're talking Suriname, Guyana, Ecuador,
Got it.
Peru, Venezuela, Colombia,
Okay.
Brazil, and Bolivia.
Wow. Okay, so like a good chunk of South America.
Yeah, and then for comparison,
Yeah.
they looked at Argentina and Paraguay, where malaria was like pretty low,
Okay.
and Chile and Uruguay, which haven't had significant malaria for like over a decade.
Oh, wow. Okay, so like a real mix.
Exactly, a mix so we can compare and contrast.
So they have this data. They've got this diverse group of countries.
Yeah.
Different histories with malaria.
Right.
What's the big finding?
So the main thing they found
Yeah.
was an inverse relationship between malaria incidence and cancer incidence.
Okay, break that down for me a little bit.
So basically, in places where malaria was more common,
Right.
cancer tended to be less common, and vice versa.
Interesting.
So they found a statistically significant negative correlation.
So that means...
That means like one goes up as the other goes down.
Got it.
Between malaria incidence and both like overall abnormal tissue growth.
Which includes...
Cancers. Includes cancers.
Yeah.
And specifically, the incidence of all cancers together.
Wow. Okay, so that's kind of setting the stage here.
Yeah, that's the headline.
For like what could be going on.
Yeah, what's the connection?
So this idea of a link between malaria and cancer isn't like totally brand new, right?
Yeah, you're right.
I feel like I've heard this before.
It's been talked about.
Yeah.
The study mentions it.
Oh,
It's been a bit controversial.
Oh, really?
There's been this idea that like maybe malaria makes you less likely to get some viral infections.
Right.
And we know some viruses can cause cancer.
Yeah, like HPV.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So in that way, maybe malaria could indirectly protect you.
Okay, interesting.
But what's really cool about this new research is that there's this recent huge analysis of a bunch of different studies.
Yeah.
And it suggested that in areas with a lot of malaria transmission, there might be lower death rates for some common solid cancers.
Like what kind?
Like colon, lung, stomach, breast cancer.
Wow. Okay, so that's already a pretty fascinating twist.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So this South American study, though, really focused on incidence, right?
Yes.
So new cases of malaria and cancer.
Right, not the total number of people who have it.
Yeah. Why was that?
That's a great question.
Like, why focus on that?
So they specifically looked at incidence,
Okay.
the number of new malaria and cancer cases each year
Yeah.
in people 25 and older.
Okay.
They didn't focus on prevalence.
Which is like
Prevalence is like the total number of cases at any given time.
existing cases.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they did that because malaria is usually short-term illness.
Right. It's acute.
Yeah, it's acute.
You get it, you're sick, then hopefully you're better.
Exactly.
Cancer is like long-term.
Long-term, chronic.
So are they thinking that looking at prevalence would have kind of messed things up?
Yeah, it might have made it harder to see that direct link
Yeah.
between getting malaria
Yeah.
and then maybe developing cancer later.
Okay, that makes sense.
So they used data from the Global Burden of Disease Study
Okay.
and the IHME platform.
I mean, these are like huge
Massive
data sets.
tons of health information.
Okay, so that's where they got all this stuff.
Yep.
So let's talk malaria trends
Okay.
in South America.
All right.
During those 3 decades, was it pretty stable or were there like big changes?
So for most of the countries, there was a pretty big drop in malaria cases
Really?
over those 30 years.
Interesting.
Brazil is a great example.
Okay.
Back in 1990, they had something like 31 new malaria infections for every 1,000 people.
Wow.
By 2017,
Yeah.
that had dropped to just like a couple per 1,000.
So a huge drop.
Yeah, like 90% decrease.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
What about other countries?
So Ecuador also had a big reduction overall.
Okay.
But they had a kind of a weird thing.
What do you mean?
Big drop early on,
Yeah.
then a 5-fold increase in the late 90s
Oh, wow.
before going down again sharply.
Okay, so like up and down, but
Yeah.
generally trending downward.
Exactly. Venezuela was similar.
Okay.
They decrease at first, and then almost a 3-fold increase starting around 2011.
Interesting.
Argentina and Paraguay consistently had very few cases
Yeah, we talked about that.
throughout like the whole time.
Yeah.
And Chile and Uruguay basically malaria-free for over a decade.
Right, right.
So yeah, a lot of variation, but overall a downward trend in most places.
Okay, so malaria generally decreasing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what about cancer?
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
This is where we see that inverse relationship.
Okay.
So in Brazil, for example,
Yeah.
while malaria was going down,
Mm-hmm.
the total number of new cancer cases was actually going up.
Oh, wow.
So it went from about 255 per 100,000 people in 1990 to around 305 per 100,000 in 2017.
So like a steady increase.
Yeah, a steady increase.
While malaria was going down.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we saw similar opposite trends in other countries.
Okay.
Like Ecuador cancer really started increasing after 2001,
Okay.
which is right around when malaria started decreasing a lot. And in Venezuela after 2012,
Yeah.
when malaria cases started going up again,
Mm-hmm.
cancer actually started to decrease.
Wow. So like a mirror image almost.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Oh, okay. So that's like just eyeballing the trends.
Right, yeah.
But they actually did like statistical analysis too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
To see how strong this connection is.
So when they looked at all 10 of those South American countries
With malaria.
with malaria, right,
Yeah.
for that 30-year period,
Yeah.
they found a pretty strong negative correlation
Okay.
between malaria incidence and the incidence of abnormal tissue growths,
Okay.
which includes cancers.
So again, one goes up, the other goes down.
Exactly. And the correlation coefficient was negative 0.2.
Okay.
And the p-value was really low, less than 0.00005.
Okay. So what does that mean?
That means it's super unlikely to see a result like that just by chance.
Right.
It means there's probably something real going on.
Yeah.
And they found a similar correlation, specifically with total cancer incidence,
Okay.
negative 0.3, 2 for the correlation coefficient,
Got it.
and a p-value less than 0.005.
Okay. So pretty similar.
Yeah, so all those numbers together are saying there's a real inverse relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe not super strong, but definitely there.
Okay. So then what about those countries where malaria wasn't really a thing?
A good question.
Like Chile and Uruguay.
So they actually found something different.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so in Chile,
Mhm.
they didn't find a strong link between the year and the abnormal tissue growth,
Okay.
but they did see a strong positive correlation between the year and total cancer incidence.
Okay. So that means.
That means as time went on in Chile,
Yeah.
cancer cases went up
Yes,
significantly.
And Chile didn't really have malaria.
Not much malaria, no.
Interesting.
It was even clearer in Uruguay.
Okay.
They found strong positive correlations between the year and both abnormal tissue growth and total cancer.
So in both of those countries without malaria,
Right.
cancer just kept going up
Up.
over those 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the countries with malaria, cancer went up less or even down.
Right.
In the countries without malaria, cancer just went up and up and up.
It's like a tale of two different trends.
So this kind of leads to the big question.
The big question.
Why,
Right.
how could malaria
Yeah.
maybe protect against cancer?
What's the mechanism?
What's going on biologically?
Okay, so this is where it gets really fascinating.
Okay.
And the researchers have this really cool idea.
Yeah.
And it all has to do with how our immune system responds
Okay.
to the parasite that causes malaria.
Which is called
Plasmodium.
Okay, Plasmodium.
So when you get malaria, the parasite goes through all these different stages in your body. But it's when it's infecting your red blood cells
Yeah.
that your immune system really kicks into gear.
Oh,
So these infected red blood cells release all these signals.
okay.
And those signals tell the immune system something's wrong.
It's like an alarm.
Exactly like an alarm bell going off.
Okay.
Telling the immune cells we've got an invader.
Right, so the body is fighting back.
Yeah, totally.
But how does that connect to cancer?
So the Plasmodium parasite,
Yeah.
it has these unique things about it
Okay.
that our immune system sees as foreign.
Hmm.
Specifically, its DNA.
Yeah.
It has these sequences that are really common in bacteria and parasites,
Okay.
but are way less common in our own DNA.
Got it.
And our immune cells have these special sensors
Okay.
that are really good at spotting these foreign DNA sequences.
So it's like they're looking for these specific things.
Exactly.
Okay.
And one of these key sensors is called toll-like receptor 9,
Okay.
or TLR9.
TLR9, got it.
And get this,
Yeah.
the malaria parasite makes this byproduct called hevazoin.
Okay.
And that actually makes those sensors even more sensitive
Really?
to the parasite's DNA.
Oh, wow. So it's like turning up the volume on the alarm.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the parasite.
Yeah,
It's got these flags, basically.
Yeah, like molecular flag.
That our immune system can see
Right.
and react to.
And then it's like turning up the volume
Yeah.
on the alarm.
So what happens when this TLR9 sensor
Right.
is activated?
Okay, so when TLR9 gets activated on certain immune cells,
Okay.
they start making this other molecule
Okay.
called OX40 ligand,
OX40 ligand? Okay.
or OX40L.
OX40L, got it.
And OX40,
Yeah.
that's like a switch on other immune cells,
Okay.
especially T cells.
Okay.
And T cells are super important for fighting infections
Right.
and for attacking cancer cells.
Yeah, I've heard of T cells.
So when OX40L on one immune cell
Yeah.
binds to OX40 on a T cell,
Mm-hmm.
it basically tells those T cells
Yeah.
to get to work, like wake up and multiply.
Got it.
And it can also dampen the activity of another type of T cell
Oh, wow.
called a regulatory T cell.
What are those?
So these regulatory T cells, they're kind of like the peacekeepers of the immune system. They keep things balanced.
Yeah.
They prevent the immune system from attacking our own body,
Right.
which is good.
Yeah, we don't want that.
But in cancer,
Yeah.
they can actually sometimes suppress the immune response.
That would fight the cancer.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. So they're actually bad in that case.
They can be.
Yeah. Interesting.
So by activating the T cells that fight cancer
Yeah.
and maybe hindering these regulatory T cells,
Right.
the immune response to malaria
Yeah.
might actually make it harder for cancer to develop.
So it's like a side effect.
It's like a bonus.
Yeah.
Cross-protective effect.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And they talked about this pathway
Mm-hmm.
being looked at in cancer treatment too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like as a way to treat cancer.
So researchers have been trying to use synthetic versions of those foreign DNA sequences
Oh, wow.
that are found in Plasmodium.
Okay.
And these are called CpG oligodeoxynucleotides.
CpG.
To basically stimulate the immune system to fight cancer.
So you're like giving the immune system a fake signal?
Yeah, like a fake danger signal.
That makes it think there's malaria.
Exactly.
And then it starts attacking the cancer.
Yeah, so when they introduce these synthetic DNA fragments near a tumor,
Mm-hmm.
it activates TLR9,
Those sensors.
yeah, on
Uh-huh.
the immune cells in the tumor,
Yeah.
which makes them produce OX40L
Right.
and activates T cells to attack the cancer.
So it's the same pathway.
It's like the parasite is doing it naturally,
Right.
and we're trying to mimic it with these synthetic DNA things.
That's incredible.
It's pretty amazing.
And they talked about the drugs too, right?
Oh, yeah, the malaria drugs like
Yeah.
chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine.
Right.
So those have actually been shown to have some effects on tumors
Oh.
and on the immune system.
How so?
So they might be interfering with cellular processes
Okay.
and influencing immune responses.
Interesting.
But they didn't have specific data
Right.
on which drugs were used in the people they looked at.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say for sure
Right.
what role those drugs played in the correlation.
Got it.
But it's definitely something to look into.
So we have this really cool hypothesis
Yeah.
about the immune system being primed
Primed, yeah.
by malaria,
Mm-hmm.
and that may be offering some protection against cancer.
Right.
But they also said there are limitations.
Yeah, for sure.
Like correlation doesn't equal causation.
It's the classic saying.
Yeah, just because two things happen together doesn't mean one caused the other.
Exactly.
So they're saying there could be other things
Right.
that they couldn't account for.
So, for example, they looked at nutrition
Okay.
and didn't find a correlation.
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't have great information on, like, social and health system changes over those 30 years. And those changes could affect both malaria and cancer.
Yeah, independently.
Independently, exactly.
Okay, so to sum up,
Right.
we've got this fascinating relationship
Yeah.
between malaria and cancer in South America.
Over 30 years.
For 30 years.
Right.
And as malaria went down, cancer often went up.
Right.
And vice versa.
Vice versa.
And there's this idea that the way our immune system responds to malaria, especially those TLR9 sensors,
Right.
and the T cells,
could
be giving some protection against cancer.
A little bit of a silver lining.
Yeah, almost a silver lining to a pretty bad disease.
You don't want to get malaria.
No, definitely not.
That's interesting.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
So the main thing is this inverse relationship.
Yeah, that's the big takeaway.
Okay.
That malaria exposure might somehow protect against cancer.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
It's pretty wild.
That something that's so bad for you could also be doing something good. It's all about the immune system.
Yeah, how the body responds.
The body's a complex system.
Super complex.
Yeah.
And for our listener, I think the big takeaway here is...
So what?
The so what is that our health is just so complicated.
Right.
Like, who would have thought
Yeah.
that malaria could be connected to cancer?
It's not intuitive.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And it shows you that, like, what happens in one part of your body can have these ripple effects. Like, you know...
Unexpected consequences.
Unexpected consequences.
Good and bad.
Good, bad, yeah.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
So I think this opens up a lot of new questions.
Yeah.
Like, could we use this knowledge to develop new cancer treatments that mimic the immune response to malaria?
Yeah.
What parts of that immune response are the most important for this protective effect?
We need more research.
We need way more research.
To figure all this out.
Yeah.
But it really makes you think.
It does.
Could getting rid of infectious diseases, which we're doing a good job of.
Generally.
Yeah, one of these unexpected effects on things like cancer.
On chronic diseases.
Yeah. It's a pretty crazy idea.
It is. It's a big question.
It is. It's a big question.
Yeah.
But it just shows how much we still don't know.
Right. We're just scratching the surface.
About how our bodies work.
About the complexity of it all.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
We're just like these walking ecosystems.
We are.
Full of surprises.
Totally.
Well, on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that.
Yeah. Think about that.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And we'll catch you next time.
See ya.